It's my natural instinct to be nice, but I'm also a natural fighter when it's worth fighting for.
Welcome to Face Chicago. I'm Deborah Frazier. In November of 2016, Susana Mendoza made history when she became the first Hispanic to run as a Democrat for a statewide office. The race was for Illinois Comptroller, and as you probably know, she won that office. Susana joined me recently on Face Chicago to discuss the issues of violence and trauma with Pastor Chris Harris of Bright Star Church in Chicago. While we had her in the studio for that program, we couldn't let her leave without spending some time talking with her about Illinois' financial crisis. Thank you for being willing to talk about this portion with us as well. You have a great responsibility in your job.
I feel like it's the greatest challenge I'll probably ever have in my life, and probably the most challenging position in the state of Illinois today.
You deal with the state's fiscal accounts and their bills, and this comes after 2 years without a budget.
That's right.
So we're talking, I think it's $15 billion backlog?
Yes.
Yesterday. And interest? Where are we at?
We were at about $16.3 billion in bills that have yet to be paid. We're making significant payments today, so we'll probably be down again to more in the $15 billion range, but it's still obscene.
And you were looking for a loan. Where is that?
Yes. Oh, so that's great news. We were able to finally secure a $1.5 billion bonding deal, which, you could say is borrowing or a loan, but the way it works is this. Currently, the state of Illinois, of that $16 billion, a large majority of it is being charged a penalty for those bills being late of up to 12%. So we're paying 12% interest on this existing debt. And I try to explain to people, don't think of this so much as borrowing, think of this as refinancing existing bad debt. So let's say you're a homeowner and you're paying 12% on your home loan mortgage, right? That would be horrible. And then somebody told you, we can take your mortgage and refinance it, and how about you pay 4%? You'd be crazy not to do it. So that's what we're urging the governor to do. The legislature, when they passed the budget on July 6th, as part of that budget plan that passed, they gave him a $6 billion authorization to go to the market with Illinois bonds. Now, Illinois bonds have always been paid back. No matter how bad things have gotten, we've always respected and honored our debt service commitments. So Illinois bonds are always going to be in high demand. And we were hoping that the governor would have taken this action 2 months ago. He waited 2 months, but better late than never. And just this week, we were able to secure a loan, not at 6%, which is what many people thought it would be in a worst case scenario, or even 4% in a best case scenario. We actually were able to do a initial offering of $1.5 billion worth of bonds at 3.5%. It was a spectacular rate, and that's going to give me that, coupled with an additional $4.5 billion that are still to go to market. Hopefully by the end of November, we'll be able to make a significant dent in that bill backlog. With that $6 billion, I can leverage some money with federal matching dollars to turn that into $8.5 billion, and that will cover about half of the bill backlog.
I thought you were looking for at least 3. So
we're way ahead of where, yes, we're way ahead of where we were. So it looks like we're going to get the full 6. I can turn that 6 into 8.5 because we will be eligible for some federal matching dollars on some of these bills. And so we'll take that bill backlog down to potentially $7.5 billion or so. It's still an outrageous number, but it's certainly much better than $16 billion, and it will save taxpayers over the life of this 12-year loan, which is a relatively short term, probably between $6 to $8 billion. It's significant savings for taxpayers.
More with Comptroller Susana Mendoza about Illinois' challenges after the break. Welcome back. Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza has been described as a ball of fire, aggressive, tenacious, a kind soul, a leader, and an inspiration. It probably takes all these traits to survive in the rough and tumble world of Illinois politics. Pretty quickly after entering office, your position, you found that it really affects real people at the same time. Tell us about your journey in that direction. It's not just about the numbers.
Sure, especially that is true. When I was running for this position, what motivated me to run for it is that I didn't think it was right to talk about this bill backlog in the context of just a number on a spreadsheet. I kept saying, look, these aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. At the time, it was about $9 billion. And I thought, it's not just a number on a spreadsheet. These are real stories about people who've been impacted, who've been devastated. Some folks lost their entire businesses, which means their livelihoods and the livelihoods of the people that they employed. How does that make our state better? It might take a number off the spreadsheet as no longer on the books, but we've just decimated families and made our economy actually worse in the long run. Keeping people employed, keeping people contributing members to the tax base. This is how you grow our economy. Making small businesses continue to thrive instead of, and actually celebrate ribbon cuttings instead of business closures, which is what's been happening over the last 2 years. These are the things that I believe were worth fighting for as controller. And to not just win the controller spot as the state's chief fiscal officer, to process checks when we actually do have money, which is pretty much very never right now, has been the climate. But I wanted to prioritize the little bit of money that we did have to take care of the most vulnerable people amongst us who during this time of the worst fiscal crisis in the history of the state don't even have a voice. They may be so sick that they can't even articulate. Students, but let's talk about senior citizens or people in hospice care or nursing home.
You call her Mary.
Yes, Mary
Is it true that when, after meeting with Mary, you hopped back in your vehicle and just broke up?
I did. It did. And it's, you want to think you're a grown adult and a strong woman, but certain things just break you down.
You felt like you couldn't help her.
I knew I was helping her. No, actually at that point I knew I was helping her, and I was thankful to God that he put me in a position to be able to help someone like Mary. What bothered me is how many people like Mary I don't know about, and I can't help because they can't communicate with me in a way that Mary could. And Mary communicated with me, for your viewers, not by calling me. She sent me this most amazing email, but she didn't even type it. She communicated that email. She was able to transfer her thoughts into a digital format through a head mouse, a dot on her forehead. And that's about all the mobility that Mary has. When I met her, she was so much worse physically than I had imagined. But she's the most amazing person I think I've ever met. This brilliant mind trapped in a body that just is not working. And I always thought about Mary every day. I think about Mary when I wake up. I think about her when I go to bed, because she is really representative of who I'm fighting for as comptroller.
And she was going to lose her health care.
She was going to be disconnected from many of her healthcare services. She's on a ventilator. She requires absolute governmental intervention to help her. She was on the state's healthcare plan, and the state had not honored its healthcare premium commitments, right? The employees have paid, and she was on her father's insurance as a former state employee. Yet, even though they never missed an insurance premium payment, the state was going to disconnect her from her absolutely life-saving treatments. It's so morally corrupt, and it's also fiscally unsound to not give people the services that they need. We need to be better than that as a state, and I don't want to work for a state who doesn't want to acknowledge that Mary needs our help. I want to champion people like Mary. And I broke down because, again, it was so incredible of a moment to meet her. And I could never talk about Mary before without breaking down. Now I can talk about Mary. That moment was almost cathartic for me, that I got it all out of my system in a way that now allows me to talk about her and champion that cause without completely losing it in the process.
And the state.
For sure.
How Illinois' budget affects individuals and what's in Susana Mendoza's future. We'll find out after the break. Today, Comptroller Susana Mendoza is helping us understand the intricacies behind the state's budget crisis. And we're also getting to know more about her personally. You, as a young girl, small, petite, young girl, always fought the system. You played soccer. When girls weren't allowed to play soccer, you made it on a team. And you became a star player. And the list goes on. Talking about you and your faith, as we ended with Mary in the last segment, how does your faith affect your job? In fact, this experience with Mary was on your first day at work.
Yes, it was on my first day of work. And while I talk so much about Mary and how she impacted me, that made it very clear to me. My faith is present in everything I do. And that day, I don't feel necessarily like I heard a voice or anything, but I felt like that was God's manifestation to me through Mary of who I needed to be fighting for, how important and why this position of controller is so important, especially during times of fiscal crisis. Truth be said, most people don't even know what a controller does, but as the state's chief fiscal officer, you're supposed to just pay the state's bills. But when we have a $16 billion backlog and people like Mary get caught up in that, it becomes an issue of prioritizing the limited cash flow that you have to try to either save people like Mary or high-priced consultants that might be able to wait and weather that storm a little bit more.
Did you anticipate any of this when you started? That it would be?
I imagined it, but to actually get the email from Mary on the first day of my term, that's what I mean by I felt like that's the closest I'm going to come to having that conversation with God where he tells me, I'm going to make it really, really clear for you so that I never lose my focus on why I need to take on those fights. People ask me all the time, why are you so feisty and always taking on the governor? Wouldn't it just be nicer to like play nice? And I said, I don't have time to play nice when people are being decimated across the state of Illinois. It's my natural instinct to be nice. I'm always that person, but I'm also a natural fighter when it's worth fighting for. And so this is one of those things. I'm running into a burning building and trying to save people.
And you've already made a difference.
Yeah, I know I'm making a difference. But it's you don't have time to check out the architecture of the building and all these things. You just have to do what you need to do and push whatever furniture or whatever out of the way to get to the people and hope that maybe you can somehow get out of that building and have saved someone's life and not get completely charred in the process. I feel like the state of Illinois is on fire, and I don't want to run away from the fire. I want to run towards it and try to help people in the process.
What do you think has caused the fire?
Well, obviously decades and decades of not sound fiscal decisions, right? This is not just an issue that was created by this Republican governor. And I know that there's lots of people who would like to say, oh, this is just a partisan attack. It's nowhere near that. I've only critiqued the governor, not the Republican Party or the Republican members of the General Assembly in either party. And my critiques are based on the fact that I really believe in my heart that he has just not done a good job managing the state, that too many innocent people have been devastated by the lack of a budget, which he's responsible for introducing. And so I don't think it should be partisan to critique someone on what I believe is not a good job performance, but he didn't create all of the mess that he inherited, right? I mean, lots of people. I served in the legislature. You could argue I wasn't perfect. I probably didn't make perfect decisions. So we all have to own a piece of this, both Democrats and Republicans. But it is certainly, you kind of hope that with the new governor, things would get better. They've, grown exponentially worse. And it's not really about crying over spilt milk. We just have to fix it, and we have to get our fiscal house in order. And that's part of my obligation to do.
No doubt you will do.
Doing my best.
Talk about corruption. I understand that is a consideration as well.
Corruption in the system? Well, I oversaw the impeachment efforts. I led the charge on the impeachment efforts of a governor of my own party, right? So I think people have short memories whenever they say, oh, she's being overly partisan or she won't ever critique Democrats. I say, I led those charges, right?
But is there corruption in the Illinois government?
I can't pinpoint any particular right now in our current, I want to believe the best of our legislators. I want to believe that, maybe there's corruption in every aspect of the universe, right? Not just in politics, but there's corruption in the business world. I don't want to focus on all the negative, horrible things about the public service sector that I'm in. I want to think about how can we come together, identify problems. It's okay if they're bad. I just want to know how bad are they so that I can try to figure out a way to fix them. And focusing on all the negative doesn't always get us to that point of turning towards the positive and figuring out how you're going to fix things.
I feel as if you address pretty much everything with character and integrity. You call it the way you see it. Mm-hmm. How important is integrity and character in the process of politics?
It's everything. It's everything. If you don't have the people's trust, then you have nothing. And you have to earn it. I mean, certainly people who don't know me may not trust me off the get-go. They may even distrust me by nature. And that's okay. It's up to me to try to earn the people's respect, and it's okay if we don't agree on everything. I just want at the end of the day for people to know that even if they don't like what I'm saying, they don't feel that we share the same politics, that they never doubt my character or my honesty or integrity. I'm always going to be truthful, even to my own fault, right? I don't play this, well, I'm going to tell you what I think you want to hear me say to you. I just tell you what I believe. And I'm always open to change my mind based on the merits of an idea, right? Maybe I'm wrong about my facts. I'll listen to you and try to convince me otherwise, but I'm also very strong about my convictions. However, open-minded. It's like this interesting,
willing to change.
Yes, but I'm not wishy-washy either, right? But I'm absolutely open to being proven wrong, right? But at the same time, we'll fight for what I believe in. So it's not like an easy, here's A, B, C, and D, and this is Susana Mendoza. I'm constantly challenging my own beliefs all the time, but fighting for what I truly believe in. Does that even make sense?
It makes complete sense. And what you're saying, people are people. Circumstances are circumstances. Let's do the right thing regardless, even if I'm wrong.
That's right. And acknowledge that sometimes we are wrong because we're all human beings, and I don't know anyone who's perfect, who's breathing and walking on this earth. So we all have mistakes. We all make mistakes, and that's part of being a human being. I hope that people will forgive me for mistakes that I've made. I'm certainly willing to acknowledge that I'm a human and I'm not perfect. I just hope that people never doubt my integrity. My father told me, and I lost him when I was only 22 years old, he was 62, but he's the one I think about so much often as well because he would always tell me, never compromise your integrity because it's the one thing you will never ever get back. So the minute you decide to go to that dark side or to compromise the integrity, as he would tell me, he goes, you're gonna work the rest of your life trying to earn it back and it will never be the way it was when you crossed that line. So I have those moments, and I've had plenty of them in politics where you feel pressured to do things that are not in your heart to do, and I've never done them. I've always said, I don't care if I lose my next election over this.
Yes,
I'm not doing
it's
this
not
to
about
run
that.
to be in a title. I'm trying to fight the good fight because I believe in it, and I think I'm making a difference for people, and I'm not perfect, and there will be people who will never like me, and that's okay. I'm not here to win over the entire world. That's not my job. It's just to try to make the world a little bit better, leave it better than how I found it.
Can Illinois Republicans and Democrats work together? I'll ask the Comptroller that question when we return. Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza. Can Illinois Democrats and Republicans work together? And are you going to run for office again?
Okay, yes and yes. So Illinois Democrats and Republicans absolutely can work together. When I was a legislator, about 90% of my legislation had three Democrats and 2 Republicans listed as co-sponsors. My debt transparency
And you
act,
got yours through.
All of them, all of them. I worked so well across the aisle. Sometimes I'd walk into the Republican caucuses as a joke and I wouldn't immediately get kicked out, right? I had great relationships. So that's why I laugh when people say I'm so partisan. It's like, just because I disagree with the governor doesn't make me not like all Republicans. He's the only one I've attacked, and it's
he could be
professional.
Democrat, and
I would still beat him up.
Right.
I would get so much more credibility because they would be like, "Oh, look at her take on her own governor." I did that with Blagojevich. People forget, but in this case, it's based on the job, not on the person. Right. But we can work together, and I continue even in this toxic environment. My Debt Transparency Act got 9 Republican votes. This is a big deal, and I think we'll get more than 9 Republican votes when we move to override the governor next week on my bill that would require state agencies to tell me on a monthly basis how bad the bills are. I think I should have that visibility. All your viewers probably assume I do. Guess what? I don't. It's kind of like are you married?
Yes.
Okay, it's kind of like if you're responsible for for your household finances, and let's say you have 3 credit cards, and you only get your credit card bill once a month, which is what happens in the state of Illinois. I only get the bill once a year. I'm sorry, not once a month, once a year in October. and you have 3 credit cards.
That would be detrimental in my house. All right.
Yes, so imagine this. You have 3 credit cards. You're super conscious about how you spend every penny. And then one of them is for 10 grand, one of them is for 20, and one of them is for another 10, right? It's a total of $40,000 that you had no clue were racked up. And you're like, honey, we need to talk. What did you spend that? I have 10,000 here, 20,000 there, and you have no idea how much interest each of those credit cards is charging
Until
you.
the end of the year.
You have no idea what was charged. You don't know how old those bills were. You don't know if you would have paid them on a monthly basis, how much money could you have saved. You don't know which has the higher interest rate or the lower interest rate. How are you supposed to plan a plan of attack on paying those down? This is my job today as controller. Of that $16 billion, I only have visibility on about 9 of it. The other 7.5 or so is sitting at an agency level, not being reported to me other than once a year, and it's only a total number. It tells me nothing about interest payments, whether those bills are even legally appropriated, which means, do we have permission from the General Assembly to even pay those? If you send me an unappropriated bill, I can't pay it. So it's a mess, but yes, we can work together, and obviously I have a lot of work ahead of me, so I will be running for re-election as controller.
Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Someone very famous said, in a time of domestic crisis, men, and I'm going to add the word women, men and women of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party or politics. The person who said that was President John F. Kennedy, and I agree. Illinois is in a financial crisis, so let's hope and pray that our elected officials are men and women of goodwill and generosity, and that they'll be able to unite regardless of party. And let's also do our best to put into office men and women of goodwill and generosity. I'd like to thank Comptroller Susana Mendoza for what she's doing for the state of Illinois and for being our guest today. If you'd like to comment on today's program, email us or visit our Face Chicago Facebook page. And please consider partnering with TLN. This program and ministry are both donor supported. We'll see you next time on Face Chicago.